All right. Now the Docker networking. Okay. So Docker networking subsystem is pluggable, which means using drivers. So several drivers exist by default and provide core network functionality. Okay. So the first thing, yeah, by the way, I got this from the official documentation as well. Now the first thing is the bridge. So this is the default network driver. So if you didn't specify any driver, this is the default one. Okay. And bridge networks are usually used when your application run in a standalone containers that need to communicate. All right. Now we have the host for a standalone containers. Remove network isolation between the container and Docker host. We have the overlay, and overlay networks connect multiple Docker daemons together and enable swarm services, as you can see, to communicate with each other. Now the swarm service actually, which means that we have multiple Docker hosts together, right? And this is something called orchestration actually, and Docker Swarm actually is not that much used, to be honest. There is other thing that called Kubernetes actually, and it is very popular. So we have the MAC VLAN, and here the MAC VLAN networks allow you to assign a MAC address to a container, making it appear as a physical address or a physical device on your network, and the Docker daemon route traffic to that. So as you can see, and this driver is sometimes the best choice when dealing with a legacy application. All right. So if you have a legacy application that must have a physical address or MAC address attached to the network overall, so you need to use the MAC VLAN. All right. Finally, we have the none, which is for this container, disable all networking. All right. We have other network plugins you can install and use a third-party network plugins with Docker as well. So in summary, the user-defined bridge networks are best when you need multiple containers to communicate on the same Docker host. On the same Docker host, multiple containers, then we will use the default one, which is the bridge network. The host network are best when network stack shouldn't be isolated from the network host, but you want other aspects of the container to be isolated. Okay, so the Docker host and network stack shouldn't be isolated, but at the same time, you want other aspects of the container to be isolated. Overlay networks are best when you need containers running on a different Docker host to communicate, or when multiple applications work together using swarm service. So overlay, if you have multiple Docker host has many containers. So I have Docker host 1 that has 10 containers. I have Docker host 2 that have 20 containers. And I need these two hosts to communicate with each other, and all of their containers will communicate with each other. So in that case, I will use the overlay network. Now, the MAC VLAN network are best when you are migrating from VM setup or need your containers to look like physical hosts on your network, each within a unique MAC address. Okay. So if you have a legacy application and this legacy application was set up or installed on VM or configured on a VM, and we need a physical address for that, we can use the MAC VLAN network driver. Finally, we have the third-party network plugins, which is allow you to integrate Docker with specialized networking stacks, and this is actually the network plugins can be installed from a third party. Okay. So far so good. All right. I will see you in the next lecture.